You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we're putting faces to voices in FAB Facts.
An old friend isn't quite as friendly as he used to be in the Randomiser.
And it's Books 1999 with David Hirsch and Robert Wood.
Oh, that's all coming up in Pod 206.
Of the Breakaway Gerry Anderson podcast!
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Well, hang on.
What?
The Breakaway Gerry Anderson podcast. Are you saying that because it's sweet, chocolatey,
yeah.
quite satisfying, but a little bit retro?
Maybe leaves you a little bit more hungry for more at the end. One's never enough. I mean,
nice.
Yeah,
Here you go.
If you're not familiar with the sweet chocolatey snack, the Breakaway, then this will be nothing
Then
to
you'll be very confused.
Yeah, that's right. But rest assured, it is the Gerry Anderson podcast.
You're correct. Where every week we talk about all things Gerry Anderson, generally speaking. That's fair
it's
to
in there
say,
somewhere
isn't it?
if you dig deep enough. Yeah, there'll be a bit of Gerry Anderson stuff in there. Yeah.
Anyway, speaking about Gerry Anderson stuff, there's him over there, Richard N. James, N for Neinstein.
Very good, and that's you over there. I'm Jamie Anderson.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't actually going for
but
for
you did
Twitter
didn't you?
names.
Yeah, but that's it, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, that's a bit weird. And I guess over there then is Chris Dalek. Now, it's funny I say that because he's currently wandering around with a sink plunger in one hand, an egg whisk in the other.
That's weird, isn't it?
And he's somehow hung a load of teacups off of himself, which I guess are supposed to be hemispheres.
Right, okay.
And he's in his own little world.
He
just
is,
being
loving it.
Being a sort of
weird kind of charity
tin
shop
pot
Dalek. Yeah, strange.
Anyway, he's not normally doing that. Normally, he brings us an episode of the Randomiser where he randomly selects a random episode from a random Gerry Anderson series and says wonderfully entertaining and hilarious things about them. But I guess he'll do that later when he's finished doing whatever he's doing.
Doing whatever he's doing, yeah. I think he's recreating a scene from Destiny of the Daleks, by the looks of it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because you can see he's made a little quarry as well around himself out of old clothes just sort of bundled up.
I wonder what that was. I just thought he was making a mess.
Yeah, no. That's nice. Maybe I could put my pink Doctor Who jacket on and I could be Romana.
I can totally see it. Yeah, I'll be a Sontaran.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Now, do you want to know what else is coming up in the Gerry Anderson podcast this week?
Oh, please. I feel like we've gone down a weird Doctor Who rabbit hole. Yes. We're supposed to be the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Sorry. Well, we've got... okay, I'm going to say it first. We've got Fab Facts coming up any moment now, which is Jamie's favourite part of the show,
Can't wait.
Of course.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. We've got some Gerry Anderson news, because there's always something new happening in the worlds of Gerry Anderson. Even now, Pod 206, is this? Or something close?
It is 206, yeah.
We've also got, I guess it's the first part of an interview that Ben Page has conducted for us. Are there more parts?
Yes, there are 3 whole parts to this interview. So this is the first of 3.
Lovely. And that's with... I'm asking you because I've closed my script, so I can't see what's coming up.
It's with David Hirsch and Robert Wood, who are the authors of a new book about Space 1999, obviously.
Yes, great.
In fact, the book is called To Everything That Might Have Been, The Lost Universe of Space 1999.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I might go and put my
we'll find out
Koenig
about that
top on.
book.
Yeah, just to celebrate. Good. We've got, what else haven't I mentioned? That's probably it, isn't it? Apart from our lovely Podsterons who've also been in touch.
Tweets, messages, emails. People have been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.com and tweeting us with hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, all that sort of stuff. And you can do that, and then Richard will read out things and we can answer your questions next week.
Whoa, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry, I thought because you closed your script, you'd forget what to say. So
no, but that stuff isn't written in my script. I know that because I say it every week.
You just know it. Yeah, obviously. Well, don't worry, I've said it now. And now I'm going to say it's time for this week's Fab Facts.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Everybody's favourite, except for Richard James, is his super favourite. It's Fab Facts, where every week I've got a book of Fab Facts. There it is. I flip through the book, Richard shouts Fab at a random point, and that stops us upon a page. And by happenstance alone, we end up having a Fab Fact from the page where we stopped.
Sorry, can I just be clear? So you want me to shout Fab at a random point?
Please.
Okay.
During the flicking, not before or after it.
But you want me to shout Fab at a random point? Okay.
I want you to shout Fab.
What? At a random point.
I want you at a random point to shout Fab.
All right. Just a bit of fun.
I've ruined your game now, but go on, shout whatever you want. Here we go.
Okay. Fab at a random point.
Yeah, well, obviously I just stopped when you said Fab, so... Right. Well, you went earlier than last week, which means clearly we are somewhere around the 1960s.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. Well... Richard James.
Yes.
When one thinks of a Super Mario Nation voice actor, say, for example,
David
Matt
Graham?
Zimmerman.
Okay,
no. We go for Matt Zimmerman.
Oh, okay.
One tends to think of their voice, but not their face.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say.
I mean, maybe from conventions and stuff, you and I know Matt's face more.
Yeah.
But before you met him, and when you watch the shows, you think of, Alan Tracy, basically.
Absolutely right, yeah.
Now, naturally enough, as Ander fans primarily remember this lucky bunch of thespians for their vocal talents, it's to be expected, really, that that's what they remember. But did you know, Richard James, that many of these actors appeared in Dad's live-action shows as well?
I think I probably did know that, yeah.
Oh.
And that's the end of this week.
Well, that's the end of this week. Already known fact. Well.
No, go on.
I'm telling you anyway.
Yeah.
Super Mario Nation voice actors sometimes appeared in the live-action productions, and as we've already discovered, that is the end of this week's Fab Fact. No, it isn't the end, because I've been very sneaky and snuck in a surprise quick-fire Fab Fact 5.
Oh, no! How embarrassing.
Richard, you must choose one of these live-action performances by a Super Mario Nation voice artist in a live-action Gerry Anderson production. Are you ready?
I think
so. Well, ready or not, here we go.
Oh, okay, go on.
Stingray's Lois Maxwell as Ed Straker's temp secretary, or Terrahawk's Windsor Davis as the shadow security guard.
Oh, I don't think Windsor Davis was ever in UFO, so I'm going to say Lois Maxwell.
Fine. Good choice. Captain Scarlet's David Healy in UFO, or Fireball XL5's Paul Maxwell as a skydiver operative.
Paul Healy.
Fine.
How am I doing?
Thunderbirds, good. Thunderbirds Jeremy Wilkin as police inspector in The Protectors, or Ed Bishop as a Vietnam vet in The Protectors.
Oh, Ed Bishop. Hang on, is one of these true and one false, or doesn't it matter?
No, they're just your preferred one.
Oh.
Supercars Cyril Shaps as a doctor in The Protectors, or Supercars George Murcell in Crossroads to Crime?
The second one.
Brilliant, George Murcell, very good. And finally, Captain Scarlet's Cy Grant in Doppelganger, or Captain Scarlet's Charles Tingwell in UFO.
Oh, well, I love Doppelganger, so I'll say Cy Grant.
Very good.
Yeah,
that's the end of your Quick Fire 5.
Now I understand it. Can we do it again?
No.
Oh. I thought it was an either. I thought it was a true or false. Which of these appeared as, live action versions of himself?
No,
hang on. Are you saying Windsor Davis was in UFO? Was it UFO?
Let's have a check, shall we?
Look, he's having to look back now.
Well, I don't know. I'm literally going on IMDb, so...
Yes. Because I think we know that. I mean, I'm not doubting you at all.
I'm not sure we know anything, to be honest.
No, it's only the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Yeah. Right, here we go. Windsor Davis.
Lovely boy. Can't quite get that deep anymore. Lovely boy. He's right down there, wasn't he?
No.
Lovely boy.
Windsor Davis. Let's scroll back to 1969, 1970.
What if it's uncredited?
There he is. UFO. Morgan. Cat of 10 Lives.
Okay. Well, there we are. I mean, people at home knew that. Of course they did.
Of course they did. I'm just having a look at Lois Maxwell as well to see if she appeared in anything else. There she is in UFO.
Right.
And, amazing,
Great.
isn't it?
So there's very few actors that didn't appear in other things produced by Gerry.
Well, Matt Zimmerman was in UFO, wasn't he? Live action.
Yeah.
So was Shane.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, they've all
And if you're
crossed over a
talking,
little bit.
supporting Stephen Burkoff, of course, UFO Space Precinct.
Yeah.
Actually, I wonder how many actors from Space Precinct appeared in previous Gerry Anderson productions. It's interesting.
Can't be that many.
No, Burkoff for sure. I want to say, who was the chap who John brought in for Fire Within? Played the sort of head priest, Jack Headley. I mean, he was of an age where he might well have appeared in something previously. I bet he might have been in Doppelganger or something, because he was that sort of actor. John Glenn brought him in from one of the Bond films, of course.
For Your Eyes Only, was he?
Yeah, that's where I knew him. That's right. But was he
just
in
flicking
any
back to see if he was in anything
Anderson
else.
shows? Yeah.
Yes, he was in UFO.
There you go. Oh,
in Court
right.
Martial.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to hand that one over to Chris Dale. Chris, let's have a list, please, of actors who appeared in Space Precinct and also any previous Anderson production.
Yeah. Well, he's now stuck a toilet plunger onto his forehead for his third eye. Or his actual main eye, so we'll have to wait till later.
Yes,
but there you go.
enough.
That's exciting, isn't it, to see how many of them made it from voices to faces.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and sometimes
nice.
vice versa.
Yeah, that's right. Interesting.
Well, there we go. Anyway, there you go.
Sorry
I think
about
that slightly awkwardly and weirdly brings us to the end of this week's
Awkward Fact!
Face Fact!
Face Fact, yeah, there we are. Wasn't particularly awkward, but went on a bit, didn't it? That was my fault, I know.
Oh, God, yeah.
Sorry
You should have understood the assignment, really.
I know. Of course, that's what I meant to say. When I was doing it, I meant this should be a quick fire fact, shouldn't it? But I forgot about it.
Oh.
Never mind.
Well,
anyway,
this is all going terribly well, isn't
it? Well, to make it even better, let's head on over to our email postbag, shall we? Because lots of Podsterons have been emailing in at podcast@gerryanderson.com. For example, Ed says, Hi, Jamie. I hope you're well. I really enjoy listening to your show with you and Richard.
You're plural?
Hey? No, I think it's just to you.
Oh, well,
it's your show.
Thanks very much, Ed. Allegedly. Thank you.
Anyway, he says, I was wondering if you could cover the new Captain Scarlet episode Virus on the Randomiser, as it's probably my favourite of the 2005 reboot. Well, Ed, I don't think you quite understand the concept of the Randomiser here.
Yeah, it's not a Requestomiser, I'm afraid.
Right.
It is a randomiser. So, yes, I can guarantee you at some point, subject to the continuing viability of this podcast, that it will appear at some point, but we can't tell you when because it's random. That's the nature of the randomiser. Fully random.
It continues, I was also wondering if there are any plans to produce a Haynes Spectrum Agents Manual of the new Captain Scarlet. I love all the vehicles, characters, and equipment, but to my knowledge, there are no real in-depth blueprints of Skybase, the Rhino, Albatross, Cheetah, etc. Are there any strings you could pull, pardon the pun, to make this a reality? Best wishes from Ed.
I have a feeling that there might be some pages to do with that in an upcoming something or other, but that's all I can say.
Okay. And how many times have you heard no strings attached? I mean...
pull strings, no strings attached all the time. At least twice a day.
Yeah, of course. Well, there was one of them. Peter Durnan says, Gentlemen, so disappointed I couldn't make it to the concert documentary live podcast. I was sadly out of the country.
Peter.
Yeah, however, in an attempt to pass the time on the plane journey, I had saved 2 podcasts, so got to listen to them back-to-back. This does, of course, raise the all-too-common issue of clammy ears. So this got me thinking of a suitable tagline for the pod, the Gerry Anderson podcast, worth getting clammy ears for. You're welcome. Keep on keeping on. Best regards, Peter Durnan. Yeah,
I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've got one right now.
Have you? Just the one? Oh yes, because you've done the whole.
Because I've got an ear exposed.
The weird thing, an ear exposed. Yeah. Hello there, Isle of Wight, Paul Hyde here.
Hello, Paul Hyde from the Isle of Wight.
Paul says, I went to the Portsmouth Comic-Con at the weekend where I met Mark Silk and Pam Rose from Space 1999. I've decided to rename myself.
Oh.
He says, instead of Paul White from the Isle of Wight... instead of Paul Hyde from the Isle of Wight...
That's it.
If it's okay with you, I shall call myself Ambassador Paul Hyde from the Isle of Wight, as I spent a lot of time spreading the word of Anderson, the podcast, the store. As someone asked me, can you get any merchandise? So of course I told them all about the stuff they can purchase from all the Thunderbird stories and the Stingray one. In fact, Mark Silk was helping me promote Stingray as he's playing Troy. And of course, not forgetting the Space 1999 stories. There was this young lad who was blind and he started singing Marina and it was smashing. He says, well,
Lovely.
that's all, folks. And that's from Ambassador Paul Hyde from the Isle of Wight.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Yes.
With these emails, you're really spoiling us.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Miles says, hello, gents. He said, definitely dodging the salutation order challenge. I'm loving the Keith Alexander interviews. He's one of my favourite Anderson contributors and a fellow Australian, so that's also cool. Miles says, his presence on the podcast did get me wondering, however. Are we going to be hearing the Velvet Buckley Alexander tones on any upcoming audios from the Anders stable? Yours, hopefully, Miles.
Currently, no plans. I'm afraid. Just nothing up on the schedule that would require Keith's vocal skills.
Not out of the question, though, I suppose.
Absolutely not out of the question. No.
Yeah.
No. Who knows? Maybe one day.
Penquilla says, hi Jamie and Richard, this is a query prompted by another podder reminiscing last week about the first Andacon in 2014. This made me recall an event the year before, the Brit Sci-Fi event at the National Space Museum in Leicester in 2013. There, you, Jamie, were on a panel with Judith Shutt and Richard Gregory. Judith was talking about the techniques for operating hand puppets in Terrorhawks and the difference between those and marionettes. And at this point, Richard reached behind him into a black bin bag and, to gasps from the audience, pulled out his Scott Tracy puppet, which he explained he'd been given by Christine Glanville and was mostly original parts from when she worked on Thunderbirds. Now, Richard is sadly no longer with us. I was wondering, what has become of this treasured relic? Do you know where Scott is now? Best wishes to you both and Chris. Keep up the good work. FAB Penquilla.
Yes, I certainly know where Scott is. I've spent quite a lot of time in his company over the last little while.
Have you now?
Yes. Now, if you recall the recent Children in Need puppet music video.
Oh, yes.
Scott was in that. That's that Scott. When we did some promotional video and stills for the concert, Scott was in those as well. He's around all the time.
Okay.
And now that's because Scott is now taken care of by Richard's family. And in particular by his niece. So we do a lot of work with them, making sure that Scott still gets to the light of day and still gets to thrill people in the same way that he thrilled you, Pen, when he emerged from his bin bag. And you'll be pleased to know that he's had an upgrade from a bin bag to a plastic tray. So
that's good to hear. I mean, frankly, they keep me in a bin bag and wheel me out for the podcast every week. So, I don't know why he should expect anything different.
Yeah, but protects you from the UV, doesn't it?
It does. That's very true.
That's why you look so youthful.
Yeah, thank you. Tony says, hi guys, I just saw your YouTube video. I'd love to see a big budget version of Joe 90, but in the same style and time as Mad Men. Don't bring it into the present day. I think that would be too much like a modern day Spy Kids. Yuck. What can we do to make this happen? Says Tony.
Well, Tony, if you could write a cheque for about probably £40 million, make it out to Ants Entertainment and send it over. Then we'll make your dreams come true.
If you could just make it out to Richard James, that would be just as good, to be honest.
Would that work?
Yeah, that would work. It's interesting, though, isn't it? We often think of a reboot or an update, don't we, for these programmes and shows, but what if we were to remake, let's say, Joe 90 and set it in the 60s? That would be quite nice. That would work.
I can absolutely see it working.
Yep.
There's lots of stuff that does work when it's sort of time locked in that way in its setting.
That's right.
So who knows? I feel it's relatively unlikely as things go right now.
Well, I think we can all agree to that. Emma says, hi, Jamie and Richard. It's Emma Whitehouse Bird here. I hope you're both well. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to your FAB Facts podcast video this week. Strange. She says, incredibly, during the last 3 years, on and off, I've been working on the concept for a new Joe 90 TV series. I was particularly struck by your comment regarding a darker and grittier adaptation of the show, as this is the approach that I've also been pursuing. Many of the ideas I created for potential episodes explore the ethical side of placing a child in perilous situations, which, as you observed, isn't touched upon in the original show. Emma says, I was introduced to Joe 90 in my late teens. I grew up with the original Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, and through through my appreciation of these shows, I became eager to seek out more Anderson productions. Yes, that's the way it goes, you see. She says, on seeing Joe 90 for the first time, I was taken aback by the show's ingenious concept, although left bitterly disappointed that the series didn't appear to take full advantage of its premise. Joe 90 does indeed have serious potential to be a really engaging, dramatic series, packed with thrilling adventures and complex characters. And as an Anderson enthusiast with a passion for filmmaking, it was great to listen to your comments on remaking these classic shows, and reaffirmed my desire to pursue just that. I'd be happy to share my ideas with you if they'd be of interest. Best wishes, Emma. P.S. It was great to meet you both at the Standby for Action concert in the VIP lounge. I was dressed as Wanderler Moore. Yes, I remember that lovely dress, of course.
There's that picture, I think, of me and Emma. Yes, lovely. Well, now, can I say something very boring now? Administrative.
What again? Oh, go on, yes.
Why break the habit of a lifetime, as they say?
Exactly. Go on.
No. So sometimes people do send in things saying, oh, I've got a story idea, or I've written this book, or I've written this script, or whatever. And we cannot read them. Anything that comes in as I've got an idea immediately gets deleted. It's company policy across the board. And that sounds really mean, but it's because you might send something in, and there are only so many ideas in the world about various things, aren't there?
Yes.
You might send something in which is similar to something that we are already working on, or we might work on in the future.
I see.
Now, if we read your thing, then we open ourselves up in the future to potentially go, hang on, no, that was my idea, I sent that in. Fair enough, you might think. But it's not fair because we're working on bits and pieces all the time.
Yes.
So I'm afraid to say we cannot accept any submissions for anything. It's no smear on your ability as a writer or a creative. It's just to protect ourselves and the team from anything like that happening, which is why these things have to come via agents or lawyers or whatever to make sure everyone's sort of protected, really. You as much as us.
But we always love to hear, don't we, people dabbling with their own concepts and ideas. That's always lovely.
Yeah, of course. That's not to say you can't say, oh, I've got a one-line idea, isn't this a fun, silly thing, and tweet it.
Yes.
But anything that's more in-depth that gets sent in, I'm afraid to say it gets deleted immediately. That's terrible, isn't it? That we have to do that. But
you have to protect yourself, and you have to protect other people as well. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
There we go. I've got another very long one. I'm going to wait because I want to read this one out after the Gerry Anderson news.
Ooh, okay.
All right.
We'll have a little break.
Wait,
with some Gerry Anderson news.
Yeah.
And then, straight back to Richard's long one. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go with this week's Gerry Anderson news. Yes, it's this week's
Gerry Anderson news. Oh. Sorry.
You're supposed to say newsy news, aren't you?
Can I say newsy news 206 times? No.
You better... No, don't. No, please don't
fine.
do it.
I won't. All
Let's just say 206 brackets newsy news.
Okay. Let's say that. Oh, we just did.
It's this week's
That's
206 brackets
Gerry
news.
News. Oh, I still haven't got the hang of it. Sorry.
Okay, right. Well, we can work on that for next week. But for this week, we'll begin with this. Okay, so let's start with the concert. Yes, I know the concert has been and gone, and you well know that it's soon to be available on CD, DVD, and Blu-ray. But would you like to hear a trailer? Oh, I think you would. Well, whether you like it or not, here it comes.
Oh.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go.
I wish I was a spaceman, the fastest guy alive. I'd fly you round the universe in 5-ball XL5.
So there's just a little tiny hint of how it's all sounding.
I'm loving it.
I think it sounds rather marvellous. And you just get a little hint of the electric atmosphere at the end there. So more on release dates and all that sort of stuff very soon, but it shouldn't be too long. I've got another clip for you now. You may have seen on Twitter, thanks to Lady Penelope herself, Genevieve Gaunt, the Thunderbirds team has been back in the studio. Here's a little bit of Genevieve and John Colshaw having a rather fab time.
Yes, please.
Beg pardon, m'lady. There's a package for you.
Thank you, Parker. No return address, I see.
I'm afraid not. Shall I open it for you, m'lady?
Please do. Perhaps it's from a secret admirer, but all the same, use caution.
Very good. It appears to be a torch, m'lady. There's no message.
Strange gift. I don't suppose that it might come from one of your secret admirers, Parker.
Lummy, I'm unaware of anyone who might be carrying a torch like this for me, m'lady.
It works. What a pretty beam. Well, I never.
Oh, blimey, we've lost half the table.
Ooh, now I'm not going to tell you what that is for.
That's really interesting.
But you will find out in due course. But suffice to say that International Rescue is still go, Thunderbirds are still go, and there are more stories on the way from the FAB International Rescue team. On that Thunderbirds note, the Hoob technical tops for Thunderbirds are in and shipping. We may have already sold out, in fact, but if we haven't, you can grab one there. They're ideal for running and going to the gym and all that sort of stuff, and they're a bit looser fitting than the cycling jerseys, which are really kind of skin-tight lycra. The tech tops are not, so that might be for you if you're a gym goer, a runner, a walker, or just somebody who likes to lounge around looking like Thunderbird too. Why not?
Oh, yeah.
This coming Friday, we are doing a very special Comic-Con sale. Now, Benjamin Field and I are going to be at MCM on the main stage at 12:15 on Saturday, talking about Gerry Anderson Life Uncharted and taking questions from the audience and showing the first 15 minutes of the film. But because we can't actually be there with a stand this year, we thought we'd have a Comic-Con sale across the store. Further details later this week, but if you're looking for a bargain, then Friday and over the weekend might be the perfect time for you. And finally, this week, fingers crossed, all being well, finally the copies of Space 1999 The Vault will be shipping.
Hooray!
All signed by Chris Bentley. Now, they may well have sold out by the time you hear this, but if they haven't, we may have just the last few signed copies available. Go to shop.gerryanderson.com, search for Vault, and you'll see the Space 1999 Vault there. And if there are any signed editions left, grab them quick, because they'll be gone pretty soon. There's lots more going on.
Yeah, exciting.
But I feel like with those clips and all that sort of stuff, that's been quite a long Gerry Anderson news. So therefore, this is the end of this week's Gerry Anderson news.
That was the news! That was the news!
Beautiful.
Thank you. Why did you look like you were in pain there then when I sang it?
Sorry, I just had a momentary headache for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, no, it's gone now. It's fine.
Wasn't my
Everything's
singing.
fine.
No. Of course it wasn't.
Anyway, didn't you have something special for us?
Yes, so John Ellison has got in touch, says, "Greetings. I'm a huge fan of the many shows of Gerry Anderson. I'm 32 and I reside in Leicester in England, and I was just recently watching your video in regards to the subject of Joe 90. I mean, Jamie, I have to say, this was a really popular Fab Facts. Who knew? From a couple of weeks ago.
Who knew that Fab Facts could be popular?
Yeah, that's right. So this is about the Joe 90 almost being remade as a live-action movie. I was very intrigued to learn about how the process nearly happened, and for some time, I've wondered what it would have been like if the show was live-actionized. Plus, I've got the entire series on DVD. John says, I would personally welcome a live-action version of Joe 90, whether it was a TV show or a movie, although I think the show's a classic. The reason is because Joe 90 has such an awesome concept. As a kid, I've always imagined what it would have been like if those around that age took on risky jobs, for example, a James Bond-style spy. Another reason is because I think there could be plenty of elements to include in the remake. For example, I read reports of Joe McClane's backstory, where both his birth parents got killed in a car crash. Then, after he got adopted, Mrs. McClane suffered the same fate. It would be really cool to include bits of those, plus maybe Joe and or Mac, despite being dedicated to their jobs, could suffer a little bit of PTSD, the car crashes being one of the causes. As a matter of fact, I agree that the remake ought to be darker and grittier. The producers could make it something a bit like Breaking Bad. minus the drugs and strong language. I mean, Breaking Bad minus the drugs and strong language isn't really Breaking Bad, is it?
Breaking Bad?
No, it's probably the Sooty Show or something. One other suggestion to make for the remake is that being that Joe is 9 and the rest of the original characters are adults, the remake could feature a few more juvenile characters, i.e. some of his schoolmates or some bullies that taunt him due to his job. This may sound rather cliche, but if it's a series, maybe one time he could get a girlfriend, like James Bond does in each of the films. I think personally there should be a remake of Joe 90, and it should be live action. There were remakes of Thunderbirds, live action and CG, and Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, CG animated, but considering that Joe 90's got fewer gadgets than the latter two shows, and others that came before it, one could get away with a live-action Joe 90. For production companies, I'd be wary about Disney getting involved. He says, personally, I think they've made great projects over the years, but I know the company itself, they do have a kind of habit of censoring films. The violence that was in the show was one of the things that made Joe 90 so great.
I think that's probably fair, yes. I mean, Joe callously tossing a grenade at Moretti and blowing him to bits. I mean, that says everything you need, really, doesn't it?
Great, okay. So those were my suggestions on what I would think would make a great remake of Joe 90. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the video. It's great to know you're still in business with the podcasts and so forth. Yours sincerely, John Ellison.
Thanks, John. Very much still in business with podcasts, etc.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bit dark. That's a bit further than I would have thought, to be honest. But I suppose, the world is your oyster if you're doing a remake. But that went down some rather dark alleys, didn't it?
It did. I don't know if you can hear Eric in the background, my big dog, feeling a bit sick and making a strange noise. So apologies if you heard that. Hopefully you didn't. Speaking of things that are dark and not really appropriate. Anyway, that's enough of that.
I think
moving on swiftly.
Yes.
Ben Page is back, would you believe, with another interview. Would you like to hear some?
Yes, please. Who's he got this time?
Well, good. He's got not one, but 2 guests.
Double bubble.
Yes, it's the 2 authors of To Everything That Might Have Been, The Lost Universe of Space 1999, Robert Wood and David Hirsch.
Great.
David Hirsch has been on before, so he's, he's back again, but this time with an oppo. So here we go. Over to Ben, David, and Bob.
Well, hi, I'm Ben Page for the Gerry Anderson podcast, and I'm here with 2 very distinguished gentlemen, authors. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
I am David Hirsch.
And I'm Robert Wood.
And we're both the authors of To Everything That Might Have Been, The Lost Universe of Space 1999.
Among a couple of other things.
Yeah.
You're both incredibly prolific and well known to fans of Space 1999, but the Gerry Anderson podcast has all kinds of listeners who may not have heard of your work before. So, Robert, I'll start with you. What other projects might some fans know you for besides this book?
Sure. I previously wrote a book called Destination Moonbase Alpha, which is the unauthorized guide to Space 1999. So that's been around for a while. I don't know, 10 years, 12 years, something like that. Still available, published by Telos Publishing in the UK, which is the same publisher that we have used now for our new book. I also co-edited the autobiography of Barry Morse with another fellow, a friend of ours called Anthony Wynn. Did a couple of other books with Anthony and Barry. I edited Zienia Merton's memoir, and got a couple of other projects that are underway. And right now, of course, David and I are really excited about the reaction that we've had to our new book.
And David, you've been with us on the Gerry Anderson podcast before, but briefly, can you refresh us on all the greatness that is David Hirsch?
Well, I started out, it's got to be close to 45 years now. I started out working with Starlog magazine, and I got that job actually through my friendship with Bob Mandel at ITC, because I met him in 1976 when I went, 75, when I went to write a paper on Gerry and Sylvia Anderson, and I went to the office in New York to get research material. And Rob, and I clicked immediately. He helped me out quite a bit, and he remembered me when Starlog needed somebody to help with their Eagle blueprints. So I went over there, I got a job, and I worked for them for about 5.5 years doing the Alpha Tech Notebook and their guidebooks and stuff. And now, of course, we have the new version that Anderson Entertainment put out that I was happy to help out with. And I've just worked on the Super Space Theater Blu-rays for Network, which are new versions of the movies that I did for ITC back in the 1980s.
That's great. Thank you both for being here.
Yeah.
So, David, tell me about this this book. Where did the idea come from? And I'm sure some people have quite a few Space 1999 books. So what makes this one special?
Well, I came across a lot of material in ITC's archive back when we were doing a lot of projects, and some material they just didn't have any use for, so they let me keep. And I had a lot of early drafts of the pilot scripts, including a half-hour script for a series that Gerry and Sylvia wrote the pilot for, which was sort of an interim project between the shows UFO and Space 1999. And with that, some other drafts and a lot of memos and writer's guides, I had been sitting on this stuff for years. In 2017, Rob and I met in the flesh at a convention. We talked about it, and it was about 2 years later at a second convention that we kind of hit upon the idea of doing a book. Rob took the material, had it all scanned in and everything, and thanks to the pandemic, we suddenly had a lot of free time to start working on the book whenever it shut down.
The other half of that was that the stuff that David had was amazing. Like there's incredible treasures in there. Chris Penfold was at the convention, and we showed to Chris what David had in his collection, and he was amazed to see some of these things after all those years. And so we had the impetus to do a book, but there wasn't enough material there. So we had to think about what else was going to be in it. And unfortunately, Martin Landau had passed away by that point. And there was going to be an auction and a sale of stuff from his estate in LA. So I went to LA for this sale and purchased, luckily, a box of paperwork that had a lot of stuff on Space 1999 in it. So once we had that, and I started to see what I had, from Martin's collection, showing that to David, then the whole shape of the book started to really come together for us, because there were just a lot of amazing ways that all the material kind of synchronized together.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is new and never before seen material from behind the scenes in the making of the show.
There's a lot of bits and pieces either came out over the years, but nothing was, I would say, written in stone. And there was a lot of stuff that was rumored but lost, like Johnny Byrne's critical commentary. We have documentation on a spin-off series that was only rumored to have existed, but now we have proof of it. And that was all thanks to what Rob found in the archives.
Yeah. Martin Landau was a terrific hoarder, and we are grateful.
We love hoarders, especially when the stuff is organized.
Now, how did you find that material? Was it pretty organized, or did you have to really dig in to sort through it?
The stuff from Martin's collection was pretty much organized. The estate was having a sale. The individual items in it were, more or less categorized. There was this box of paperwork, and one of the people organizing it knew me and knew what I would be interested in, and said, "Here, take a look at this box." And so I was going through it, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I need about 3/4 of this." I let a little bit of it go. But I didn't, it wasn't what I needed, but it was pretty much organized. And once I started to see what was in there, recognizing a lot of it, and the letters were incredible. Yeah. The letters from Gerry Anderson, from Sylvia Anderson, from Barry Morse, from Brian Johnson and George Bellac, and all kinds of people, and from Martin as well. There's a letter from Martin to Lou Grade, which is in the book, and I think it's a lot of those things that are just these little amazing time capsules that we are just so grateful to have come across and been able to include in the book. And also the reason we were able to include them in the book was the grateful generosity of the estates of a lot of these people. So, it's Susie Landau, it's Hayward Morse, it's, the children, basically, who have given us permission to use these things. So that's been wonderful.
Now, you mentioned Johnny Byrne's critical commentary, which, in my humble opinion, is worth the price of the book by itself. But for people who don't know what that is, can you describe it and tell us a little bit about where it fits in the history?
It was a legendary document, in my opinion. Johnny talked about it repeatedly at different conventions, and it was always this, holy grail that he had written analyzing year one. So this is in the period of time between year one and year two, when they were starting to sort of chart the course forward. If there was going to be another year, what would they do? And part of that was analyzing the first season, what went right, what went wrong, and all that kind of thing. So Johnny watched all the episodes, wrote this critical commentary, and he lost his copy of it over the years. So Johnny didn't have a copy. Nobody seemed to have a copy. And in Martin Landau's archives, I found 2 original copies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we have documents showing all the people that were considered for casting on the show, for the leads, writers and stuff. I mean, the show at the beginning was really got a bad rep of being called like Star Trek Junior. I mean, everyone compared to Star Trek, but the only thing that was really related to Star Trek and its creation was they did approach Gene Roddenberry to be a story editor, which he turned down because he said he's a producer. But then he also recommended writers like Dorothy Fontana. But the problem with the show was the fact that it was based in England, and you had to get somebody who wanted to move to England because it was a time where, without the internet, doing something remotely was very difficult. And Chris talks about the difficulties that he had trying to handle remote writers, which was impossible in his opinion. To have a writer based in New York or California and constantly mailing stuff back.
And that was actually one of the problems with George Bellac that partly led to him not staying with the show. To whatever extent he and Gerry had different approaches to story, that's one thing. But another element of it, which is hinted at in the book, we don't directly go into talking about it, but you can figure it out if you look at the clues.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, well, so Bellac went over to work on Space 929, but to England to work on Space 929. And in the book, we have a letter from George, operating as story editor, talking about commissioning a script, and he's written it from his apartment in New York. So he went over and didn't stay long. He went back to New York, and he was sort of working on space long distance, which, of course, we know was a huge challenge. I mean, Chris Penfold talks about that in the book, too. So I think there was also a sense that Gerry didn't feel that George Bellac was kind of 100% committed. He wasn't physically present. He was working long distance, maybe on other things at the same time. And so that was also partly where George Bellac, didn't end up staying.
But the thing that we show in the book is just how crucial George Bellac was to the final scope of the show. I mean, every week it says, series created by Gerry and Sylvia Anderson, and they created the bones for the show. But George was the one who breathed life into the characters and the locale. I mean, the whole story guide that he and Chris Penfold created is so detailed, and we've reproduced both versions of the book. Their first pass on it, and then their final pass that was much more detailed. To see how he approached the show to be as realistic as possible. These were writers who were not known for science fiction. They went after writers who were good writers, who could tell a story, who could tell good characters. And I think that was sort of a reaction to the fact that they were saddled with this unbelievable premise that they could only do because Abe Mandel would not greenlight the show unless they had that premise. But that premise actually went back to UFO Series 2, because Abe did not see any of the Earthbound shows like Question of Priorities, which was Gerry's favorite, as a science fiction show. He thought it was a soap opera. It's all ground, there's no action, no space battles. So he didn't want any of that. He wanted to guarantee the show was going to take place in space. So Gerry just arbitrarily said, well, we'll blow up the Earth. And Abe said, no, that's going to scare viewers. Well, then we'll blow up part of the moon and send the moon out into space. Oh, that's better. And that became the whole genesis of the format of the show right from square one. And they were through all the different versions of the show right up until shooting. That was the basis. So all the writers, Chris Penfold had to bring people in who could work around this unbelievable premise and try and make the whole location, the characters, the plots real. And I think that's where the whole metaphysical aspect of the first series came about, was as a way to work around this premise.
Also, initially in Zero G, of course, the very first script written by Gerry and Sylvia, it was the aliens that they were dealing with who negated gravity to send the moon out of orbit. So, technically, I would suppose that the nuclear explosion is maybe more scientifically accurate than aliens negating gravity.
It's certainly more dramatic visual. Yeah.
Exactly.
Instead of going, boom, it's out of orbit. That's it.
And then, of course, George Belak was instrumental in sort of the humanity of the show and a lot of the equality of the show. The fact that you had the second lead, the doctor, was a female. That was initially the character was a male. We've got that in the documents in the book as well. And then she became a female, and I think that was George Belak. A lot of those things. Chris said that George, fought for that.
George was very, very forward-thinking. In his scripts, the base is truly international. He's constantly writing different characters from different nationalities, and he doesn't really make the female characters any less important or less educated or capable as their male counterparts. Everybody is on an equal footing. He just writes really good characters. And I think had he stayed with the show, it probably would have been very different.
There were a lot of things that were revolutionary. The female second lead, Dr. Russell, and if you look at Star Trek, they had the supporting cast. They had Uhura, they had Chekhov the Russian, they had Suluk. But Space 9 had the female second lead, which was more progressive. The second in command of medical was a black man. And that was still progressive at the time as well.
Well, the second in command in medical started out as Asian.
Yes, Dr. Fujita.
Dr. Fujita, and then became Dr. Matthias, but Fujita sort of got retained in Black Sun. He was basically a background character, but some of these names still kept in the show. What's interesting, too, in the documentation is part of the analysis and the improvements they thought would work better for Series 2 was they came up with all these ideas of how to make Helena a more progressive, more commanding character, equal to Koenig. And somehow along the way, they lost that. That she suddenly became the second banana to Tony Hannell's character in a lot of her episodes.
Yeah, in year 2. The progressiveness of the show is something interesting. And it just, in my mind, it just reminded me that, these days when a show gets rebooted or returns, and there are a couple of efforts in the world right now to try and get a reboot of Space 1999. But, it's funny when a character gets changed, maybe their sex gets changed or their race gets changed. Maybe they used to be a white man and now they become a black female or something. Or other progressive things are done to the characters. There's a certain segment of the audience on social media these days who loudly protest against that kind of thing, but proclaim themselves to be fans of a show that was progressive at the time. So what's wrong with progressive now? Anyway, there you go.
And Gerry and Sylvia's shows, when they went to live action, became very progressive. UFO did the same thing. had female characters in command positions. They had a major African character, the Moonbase Interceptor pilot who at one point became commander. So I think they were always forward thinking in that. It was just a question of what, I guess, the people above them would let them get away with, because we know they were reined in a lot.
We have quite a bit of that in the book. The input of Lou Grade, of Abe Mandel. Even, we've got some interesting letters to do with the development of Siren Planet, as it was at the time. And there's
what was Siren Planet? Siren Planet was episode 2, what became episode 2, Matter of Life and Death. It was written by Art Wallace, who was one of the few genre writers because he had done Dark Shadows, and he also wrote for The Invaders. So he had genre experience, even though he had a wealth of non-genre. And he wrote a script which was very good, but it wasn't quite what they wanted, simply because the show was evolving all through the latter half of 1973. So from the time they originally gave them their first writer's guide, the show had changed, the characters had changed. So eventually, because Art Wallace was stateside, Chris Penfold had to hand it over to Johnny Byrne, and that was Johnny's first assignment. He said, "You got to rewrite this right away. This is slated for episode 2, but we can't film what we've got." And Johnny Byrne had to go in there and do a heavy rewrite on the show to fit in with the format as it evolved.
Yeah, and while it was still Siren Planet, there's a fellow at ITC in New York called Arnold Friedman, who was I don't remember exactly what he was. He was like the director of something at ITC. Anyway, his credit is in the book. And he was sending detailed script feedback to Abe Mandel, and then Abe was relaying that back over to, George Belak, Chris Penfold, whoever. Wouldn't have been George. George was gone by then. But
he was probably on the phone with Gerry.
To Gerry.
And Gerry put Chris under the gun.
And so there was this chain of feedback that was happening, where there was so much input coming through from so many different voices that it was obviously a really difficult situation to be writing scripts like that.
Thank you, Ben, David, and Robert, or Bob, depending on what you want to say, really.
Okay. Does he know about that? Have you asked him?
I've called him Bob and Robert in the past, so I think it's fine.
Yeah, fair enough.
They were back for part 2 next week, and part 3 the week after, would you believe? Because that's how we roll here numerically.
That's right.
So thank you, David and Rob, for joining us. You can buy their book with some substantial contributions from Chris Penfold from Telos Publishing. Telos Publishing. I never quite know what.
Well, it's a Cyberman,
it feels like Telos. I know, but weirdly, there's something in my mind which means it should be different. Anyway,
pretty
Telos
sure
Publishing,
it's Telos.
or on Amazon.
Oh, there you can say that, all right.
There's a Kindle edition as well, you see.
Cool.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, part 2 and part 3 to come.
Yeah, great.
Sorry, Richard, you wanted to say something?
I was just saying that we had Ben there interviewing 2 guests, and so I used the phrase double bubble, which you're probably familiar with. But I've just realised that if ever Ben were to interview me and Kieran Jakinis, it would be double Hubble.
Bubble and...
Double Hubble.
Oh, I see.
Hubble
I thought you were going to say...
Because he provided the voice for Orin.
Bubble and Squeak.
No, it's double Hubble.
Double Hubble. That's really hilarious. I cannot wait for that interview. Can you make it happen?
Okay. Actually, talking about interviews and making it happen, I see that David Quilter has just commented on a Facebook post of mine, so maybe I should get in touch with him and see what he remembers about our time at Pinewood. Yes, maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Now, over on our Facebook group, people have been having lots of fun, of course. Now, Luna... has been working live and streaming herself working at her computer to keep other people company, which has been quite nice. And also, again, the Podsterons have been spotted in the wild, posting pictures of their various conventions. And also, Miles Parrish posted this: with the knowledge that my Stingray Blu-ray box set is at home waiting for me, I'm reflecting on the original opening titles. It's a huge shame colour transmission in the UK didn't start until well after the premiere of the show. I can imagine that the black and white beginning of the titles shifting to colour would have been absolutely thrilling on first transmission if you were expecting black and white. It's a hugely confident statement of a new era of TV, like the deliberately colourful whirling at the start of John Pertwee's first season as the Doctor. Probably the best reference point I have for the feeling would be the opening of Casino Royale from 2006, when the black and white pre-titles gives way to that spectacular opening title sequence. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. No, it's a nice stylistic thing to give you a bit of an extra whoa.
Well, it really is.
punch.
But of course, the irony is that not so many people then would have had colour TVs on which to appreciate that amazing opening.
Well, none initially. When did colour transmission start?
Ooh,
very late 60s?
Yeah, 69, 70, I think. Something like that.
So on reruns, I guess.
Hannah says, I've finally been back in my attic today to continue my work on my Saturn V model kit while listening to the audio adventures of Terrorhawks. Yes, I finally got them at last. I haven't finished Volume 1 yet, but I can say I am enjoying it. Big Finish have done a brilliant job, and I'll be getting Volumes 2 and 3 when I come to them.
Great, Hannah.
And Mark Simpson Wedge says, I now have 2 of the Thunderbirds audio adventures. All I need now is Peril in Peru, which is unavailable at the moment, so I'll have to wait. Well,
yeah, sold out.
Really?
So we'll order some more in due course. But yes, sold out very quick, these ones.
Yeah. Lots more to enjoy on our Facebook group, of course. Just head on over to facebook.com/groups/Podsterons. Answer a couple of questions. Someone will let you in. Shut the door behind you. Make yourself comfortable and join in the fun.
Yeah. Perfect.
Easy.
Well, I look forward to seeing your numbers ever increase on the podcast.
Yes,
the Podsteron Facebook group.
824, I think, last time I looked.
There you go.
It'd be nice to make 1,000 soon. What is that?
That clinking
Yes.
is Chris just putting down the final last bits and pieces from his outfit.
He's taken them off. Yeah.
He has. He's taken all of his hemispheres off, teacups, and seems to be getting back to normal. Got a giant red sucker mark on his forehead from that plunger which he put on there. But
silly boy.
More for you, Chris. I've got no idea why he was doing that. Just having a jolly. He does that sometimes.
Yeah, why not?
But I guess now he's removed his Dalek adornments. Interesting. Yeah, those.
Yes.
He can do the randomiser, where he presses a red button on his randomiser, which randomly selects a random episode of a random Gerry Anderson series or a random Gerry Anderson feature.
Oh, yeah.
And he comments on them. So he's going to do that probably now. So should we let him press his big red button?
Yeah, go on.
Press it with the plunger.
Pardon?
Oh, this can't be right. Zen, confirm that this is an accurate selection, please.
Confirmed.
That's extraordinary. Oh, hello everyone. Sorry, no time for a proper introduction today. You see, Zen has already made today's selection, and it's a bit of an odd choice considering that last week we had The Man from the Navy. This week we have The Man Who Came Back. Presumably not from the Navy, but let's find out. Here's UFO.
Affirmative.
Well, this is how you know it really is random, because even I, sad as I am, would not follow The Man with the Navy with The Man Who Came Back, just because they happen to have The Man at the start of the title. That's just how it goes. Anyway, we're welcoming back to UFO.
Entry.
No, we're welcoming back to the Randomiser, UFO. I had to think about what I was doing there. And it's strange, only a couple of weeks ago I mentioned in Lavender Castle saying that it hadn't been on the Randomiser for quite some time, and that because there were 26 episodes of it, it shouldn't be any rarer than UFO, not realising that at that time UFO had not been on the Randomiser for even longer than Lavender Castle. Not since Survival, in fact, quite a long time ago.
Craig Collins, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Have him call me when he gets down, will you?
Yes.
Straker's old friend Craig Collins is approaching Earth. I'm not quite sure
Pilot reports fire in cabin, sir.
what this ship is that he's piloting. It's clearly he's clearly a shadow operative. Why is he not using a lunar module? He just seems to be using one of those stubby little, almost civilian rockets that they'd use sometimes.
Sid reporting 3 alien craft.
Oh, good. The heat's still building up.
But did you cut the Q circuits? They're vitally important.
Lights are on. Repeat, alarm lights are on.
We'll hear that dialogue repeated again in a moment. This is also, believe it or not, only the second time on the Randomiser that we have visited the Pinewood era episodes of UFO. So this is going to be an interesting one to talk about, because I find this an interesting
4 million miles closing
experiment that doesn't quite come off, I don't think. And we'll get into that as we go along. There are some things in this story that work quite well, and there are some other things that not only don't work, there are moments in this episode that just feel very weird.
Sing to Sol 6.
Meanwhile, we have some UFOs closing on the moon. There's that shot from the Dalek affair again of the 3 UFOs.
Main warning lights are on.
Oh, there it is.
Repeat, alarm lights are on.
Oh, it seems to be getting worse.
Seems to be getting worse.
Oh dear. Why do I remember such pointless minutiae? Yeah, that shot from... Here it is again! The 3 UFOs passing by the camera and one of them dropping the probe from the Dalek affair. Uh-oh.
One UFO has changed trajectory.
It has indeed. Do you know where it's going?
Predicted target, this satellite.
Well, bother. And this is a rare sighting.
330.
Colonel Lake on Moonbase, and of course, being a woman, she has to wear the Moonbase uniform and purple wig. Only time we see her in the purple wig in the series. Oh, I do like this build-up, even though we don't really see the Interceptor pilot even. We don't know who's on the UFO, obviously. There's very little going on the human side here, but seeing the UFO hit Sid, it is quite upsetting. And then he's... I like Sid. I tend to look at Sid as a character. The voice does just so much to reinforce the idea that Sid is a character. Anyway, he's been damaged, and he's now adrift. Oh no.
Good morning, Miss Holland.
Good morning, Mr. Straker.
Ah yes, Miss Holland. A 2-episode replacement for Miss Eland, because Norma Ronald was pregnant at the time. She couldn't do this episode, and I think The Cat with 10 Lives was the other one that Lois Maxwell was in, and she's a nice replacement. You wouldn't want to lose Miss Eland forever, but yeah, Lois Maxwell surprisingly fits quite well into the world of this show. Just instantly.
Miss Holland.
See, she's even going to get in trouble with Straker. That's how she knows she's in the club.
This file transferred to the morgue weeks ago. Why is it still here?
Well, sir, it isn't certain.
You know as well as I do that space personnel are presumed dead 48 hours after failure to re-enter.
But it just...
Miss Holland, Craig Collins was one of my closest friends.
He wasn't at my wedding, and I've never mentioned him before, but...
But we have enough to worry about without trying to keep the dead alive. Now, please, just get it out of here.
He was a very close friend. And luckily for Straker, his very close friend of less than 5 minutes is not dead. He's here signalling to Sky... I can't make out the markings on that. He's got a very long beard.
Look, let's get this straight before he gets here.
He is my friend. We do go back a long way. Stop talking about it.
Now, he's on the project.
All I'm saying is that Craig Collins and I...
Look, your personal feelings for him are your own problem.
Just because you were married to him for several years,
For all you are. But when it comes to Sid's engineering, Craig is God, okay?
This is the first of several issues I have with this episode. Firstly, we have not only one, but 2 new characters, guest characters, in Craig Collins and Colonel John Gray.
Good to see anybody after 8 weeks.
And it's not the fact that we have guest characters. That's fine. We've even had guest characters in Shadow before, but the fact that they are so clearly major parts of the Shadow command structure...
Lost consciousness on re-entry.
Where have they been all this time? Where have they been for the rest of the series?
Sea. We went smash into the sea and...
Well, answer is nowhere. Non-existence. Because it's only this story that requires them to be here. And I do find that is...
Colonel Gray, thank you.
Quite an interesting, but also... unhelpful element of this episode.
Well, you heard what happened, Craig. I had no choice.
Yeah, I would have done exactly the same.
I would have sent your file to the morgue too. What is Straker apologising for here? And this is an interesting moment. Right, in that moment, Collins is alone in Straker's office with Straker. Remember that later. For subsequent developments in the episode, nothing else need happen in this episode after that moment. From Collins' point of view, the story could have ended there. We'll come back to that.
Mr. Attento.
We'll come back to several things here. I should start keeping a list, really, of stuff I have to come back to with this. Yes, they are... Between the 2 of them, they are spearheading the mission to repair Sid, because not only is Craig Collins one of Ed Straker's closest friends, he also helped build Sid.
Hi, Nina. Good to see you back, Craig. Thank you.
I don't know who you are, but thank you.
Not with you tigers around.
Oh dear. And here we go on number 2 of the strange elements of this episode.
Craig.
Collins has walked in on Colonel Lake and Paul having a bit of a...
well, it takes more than a little barbecue.
On the surface, it looks to be a fairly romantic moment. He's got his arm round her.
I just don't know what came over me.
What's going on there? Again, who knows?
Nice to see you again. I'm glad that you've been keeping an eye on things for me while I've been away.
Well, I can't say I know what you mean.
Of course you do.
This is, and I suppose, a lot of what I'm going to say are the flaws of this episode. Some people can say, oh, I can believe this stuff building up off-screen over time. And it doesn't matter that a relationship between Lake and Foster is only mentioned in this one episode and then never again. But, it's inconsistent within the idea of this as a television series. Again, we will get back to that. Because now Collins and Virginia have a bit of catching up to do.
See.
For they too were involved.
I don't feel guilty, Craig. I cried a little when I thought you were dead. After a while, I stopped crying. People do.
Yes, they do.
And we weren't exactly Romeo and Juliet.
I'm unclear, actually, on how much time is supposed to have elapsed between Collins going missing and Collins turning up again. It must have been mentioned. I've probably waffled over it.
I mean, you make it very hard for a man. All he wants to say is no hard feelings.
I'm sorry. If that's what you're really trying to say.
And a fun fact, a fab fact, actually, about Wanda Ventham, because this is only the second Wanda Ventham episode that I've covered on the Randomiser. Oh no, third, I suppose, with Identified and Mindbender. You may not know this. It's a very rarely known fact. But she is actually Benedict Cumberbatch's mother. And also, did you know that Benedict Cumberbatch's mother is Wanda Ventham? I did.
You mean?
But everybody keeps mentioning it. Every time a picture of Wanda Ventham from UFO or even anything appears online. Oh, guess whose mother she is? Guess who her son is? Did you know? Did you know she's Benedict Cumberbatch? Yes! For once and for all, shut up! Shut up about Benedict blimmin' Cumberbatch! We know! You're not making an interesting fact. It's just, we know! And she's a talented performer with a career in her own right. It's so... I'm just putting it out there. I am fed up of hearing about Benedict Cumberbatch is Wanda Ventham's son. That's a little known fact.
You didn't leave the jungle. You brought it back with you.
Anyway, I'm glad I've got that off my chest now. And speaking of getting things off our chest, Collins tried to get a bit forceful with Colonel Lake there. Again, considering what we later find out has happened to him, it's a bit strange that he would do that, but there we go. A bit unpleasant. Bit of an unpleasant moment there.
See me, Master.
What's this request for a two-man mission?
Well, fixing Sid is a two-man job. I need a partner.
Makes sense.
I want Foster.
Oh.
Why Foster?
Well, he's the only man available with the necessary know-how. Also, he's got the basic astro training. I know that he's maybe a little bit rusty, but I reckon I can lick him into shape in time.
Who are these two? Where have they come from? Why are they talking about Foster like he's...
Is that the only reason?
Some junior nobody.
I want him.
It's so strange.
All right, you've got him.
I officially authorize you to have Paul Foster in my official capacity as second in command of Shadow? I guess. It seems to be what he's playing here.
You ran a computer check on my relationship with Craig a long time ago, and the readout said that it would not affect my efficiency.
I love as well the way computers generally in this series, you feed in any question and they'll just sort it out. Again, that's something that happens elsewhere in this episode.
I'm on you and Craig and Foster. The computer seemed to think a triangle was the nastiest emotional shape there is.
After a square triangle. Yes, this actor is Gary Raymond, playing Colonel John Gray. And I think we've covered on a fab fact before that he got the role in this episode. He was up for the role of Shadow's new second in command, replacing George Sewell as Alec Freeman. It came down to between him and Wanda Ventham, and they went with Wanda Ventham. And they cast Gary Raymond in this episode as a consolation prize anyway, which is a lovely idea, but I do feel it works against the credibility of the story. to have this guy who, I mean, I joked about it just then, but he is essentially playing second in command of Shadow for this one and only story. He's appeared from nowhere, and ultimately he's going to go nowhere. Having a guest character is one thing. Parachuting in this incredibly important character...
Good enough, old man!
And then not doing anything else with him is so strange. I love the sentiment of, let's reward this guy who I guess did a good audition, but ultimately I do feel it works against the story.
200! Manual control.
But that's nothing against Gary Raymond's performance.
Is Ginny in there, darling?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
And that's Andrea Allen, who was a Moonbase operative in several episodes, again appearing without her wig in this story. As we saw, Dolores Montez had her wig off earlier as well.
Good evening, my lord. How about a little game of chess?
You're a glutton for punishment, aren't you? You've never won a game with me yet.
How about a little bet?
You really want to throw your money away?
We've never seen so many people in this room. There's Collins and Gray, Lake and Foster, the mustachioed interceptor pilot from earlier, and a female operative who I don't recognise. But then, she hasn't got the purple wig on, so I wouldn't recognise her without that.
I thought we'd been through all this yesterday.
You told me you dropped Collins. You didn't tell me you hated him.
Gray is wearing some rather fabulous trousers here. In fact, his off-duty uniform is quite something to see. Anyway, I've just snipped out a very long chess game where, believe it or not, despite having never beaten Gray before, Collins beat Gray at chess. See, it's interesting.
If there's anything you know about him, his attitude, state of mind, it's your duty to tell me.
He's different.
And you're trying to tell me that just because he beat you in a game of chess, he's a psychotic?
That is one of my favourite lines from this show. I don't feel that line gets enough love. It's not up there with, fortunately for them, an alien came through that door instead of her husband. But it should be.
Not for a game of ping pong. Foster has to shape up.
And Virginia Lake?
Virginia Lake is a girl who fell out of love.
And what about aliens? Aliens! Don't worry about aliens. Let's shut Shadow down.
What he went through in that jungle.
This is something I find odd again with this episode, is the presentation of Straker.
Full clearance. Dr. Jackson.
Yay.
Full clearance. Dr. Bluden.
Who?
Full clearance. Now all those...
Dr. Adams, Dr. Bluden. Why not Dr. Fraser and Dr. Schroeder?
Because aren't God.
Or are you, John?
Ooh. Yeah, I do find it very odd that Straker is so unwilling to accept anything odd about Collins. And I get that within the world of this episode, they are old, valued friends.
That your personal feelings don't bend yours.
But Straker just seems so keen to put his head in the sand, even when people are saying, Commander, Collins is coming at you with a chainsaw. Oh, well, you're just being silly. It's very out of character for Straker to not consider
I've got one or two things still to do at
the possibility that something happened.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Right.
And again, I think we discussed this with Captain Scarlet recently. Considering what happened to him, there is no reason he should be assigned to such a vital mission, except, of course, for the fact that supposedly, in this story again, he had some major role in constructing Sid. Anyway, we're now roaming the studios with Collins and Gray.
Excuse me, can you direct me to D stage?
Yes, of course. It's over there. Take the second turning on the right.
Oh, thanks. Mr. Gray, isn't it?
That's right, Sir Esmond.
Yes, I never...
That's Sir Esmond.
And who?
I believe is a film actor. He's getting a spooky vibe off Collins. He's blind. He's also got a chauffeur.
Come along, Charles.
Yes, sir.
Can't have you standing about all day long.
Yes, Charles the chauffeur, played by an actor named Mike Stevens, who is one of my favourite film and television extras. He turns up in UFO. He is a shadow operative in several episodes. He's on Moonbase Alpha through the first series of Space 1999. He's in Bond films. He's in Doctor Who. He's in ITC shows. He's in The Avengers. And he always has this permanently furrowed brow and look of extreme concern on his face. I love spotting this guy turning up in other things. Even when he's supposed to be happy, he looks really serious, and it's...
that's very kind.
It's like a sort of, Where's Wally kind of thing. Where's Mike going to be this week? Oh, he's in Dad's army this week. It's just... I love spotting the guy. And I would recommend, if you're bored, having seen a lot of these episodes over and over again, try a game of Spot Mike Stevens. It's very rewarding.
I went to turn it.
All right, see you tomorrow, Master.
So, they've gone back to the moon. Why did they even go to Earth? Or just for Gray to have that conversation with Straker. Okay. Well, now they're back. And I do like that we see more of the Moonbase quarters in this episode. Yeah, there's the inflatable beds that we've seen a couple of times before, but I like the revolving cupboard where they keep all the fresh laundry and everything. But as Collins is lying in bed, he's thinking of that unfortunate incident in his little module thingy where he was suffocating, and thoughts of a UFO are very much on his mind. Only one thing to do. Go out and turn down the oxygen in... Oh no, it's the pressure. He's going to reduce the pressure in Gray's suite. To the strains of reused Thunderbirds music. So while this is going on, I may as well bring it back to something I was alluding to at the beginning. One of the things that I think undermines this episode, and I really don't want to be down on this episode, because I like that it's trying something different. I don't dislike this one by any means, and as it's one of the Pinewood episodes, I still feel this is stronger than a lot of the ones that were filmed at Borehamwood. But I think what undermines this is that you have a character that we have never seen before who is convinced that another character we have never seen before is acting out of character, and meanwhile all of the characters that we have seen before, Straker, Lake and Foster, are all acting out of character. Oh, it's just so weird. I'm not aware of any other Anderson episode really that feels like it's taking place in a slightly alternate universe to the one, well, I suppose aside from the whole second series of Space 1999, it just feels like it's slightly, we're slightly off universe here. This guy is second in command of Shadow. Presumably has been for quite some time. No one's ever mentioned him. But he's just, he's suffocating a bit. And he's fallen through the, what I said, the revolving door where they keep the fresh laundry. I also like that once the air is gone and the pressure's down, the sound just drops to zero until Gray finally manages to drag himself out of his sleep sphere and get some air into his lungs again. It's very clever. And of course, Gray being Gray, he's naturally going to think that this is all the fault of one man, especially once he notices that the air gauge has been tampered with. And if ever there was a time for more recycled Thunderbirds music, this is definitely it. But of course, Gray is going to find that Collins has apparently slept all the way through this on his transparent inflatable Lilo that all Shadow operatives lie on when they're on the moon. I would have to assume that that creates some issue with dribble. A lot of people dribble while they sleep. I would like to know how that works on a plastic Lilo.
Trace for him if it's urgent.
But just be careful, John, that personal feelings don't bend yours.
Shall I put out a trace for him, sir?
I love to imagine what Aisha's thinking. Gray asks her where Straker is. She says she can put out a call, and Gray sort of looks off into the distance. What's she thinking at the other end? Anyway, we're now halfway through the episode, and something is about to happen. I think I visualise a glass case with the words, "In case of emergency, break glass for emergency Dr. Jackson." And here he is. He's come to liven the episode up.
Central computers, please.
Although even he is quite slow on the uptake with what he's found.
1 and 22.
They stop at 20.
You know something, old man? I think you're going to make it.
I've been a part of Shadow most of this episode, and with my infinite experience, I think you're going to be okay, Foster. You're a young whippersnapper, and you're pretty new to us, but what is going on with this? Why is everybody being treated so differently from normal? And it's not like this has been written by a complete, newcomer to the series.
Well, why don't we try 225?
All right. But that's my lot. I'm not pushing for the bandiest astronaut title.
Oh, I just went and looked it up. This episode was written by Terence Feely, and this seems to have been his only contribution to the series. That would explain so much. Right, so Collins overloaded his weights there, and he dropped them on Foster.
Are you all right?
What do you think? You clown.
How bad is it?
There's a rib gone. The right tibia's cracked. He'll be strapped up for a fortnight.
No.
Oh, no. I retract that because he also wrote Time Lash as well, which again is a fairly atypical story.
Qualified to fly it with you? Some mistake.
And one which doesn't really rely on much knowledge of the Shadow Organisation. So, yeah, I retract that statement, but I still stand by the fact that it must be an unfamiliarity with the show.
I mean, he and I put Sid out there in the first place.
That has led to this feeling so strange.
A man who's unstable.
He's only unstable in your mind. Look, what do you want me to do? Cancel the mission? Leave Earth undefended?
Train somebody else to go with you.
There isn't time. Collins is right. I'll go. I said I'll go.
It's an obvious trap, and I'm going to walk into it with my eyes wide closed. What is wrong with Oh, no, we've already established this. I'm not going to go on about why this is all so weird.
He tried to kill me.
He what?
Yes, Terence Feely also wrote, for the Anderson shows, Space 1999, New Adam, New Eve, which I've covered and wasn't very fond of, The Bringers of Wonder, which was brilliant, and the first episode of The Protectors,
tangible evidence,
which was also quite incomprehensible.
Not yet.
And there's a line from Straker that I like, because I think it recurs in several other stories. You have one piece of tangible evidence. I love the way Ed Bishop says that. I have a feeling he says it in another episode.
You'll have to look after things while I'm gone.
Alec Freeman has a similar line in Court Martial.
I suggest you do the same thing here.
Oh, trusted and faithful second in command of Shadow that you are. Yes. I wonder, am I alone in my feelings of just this episode being so weird and out of the norm in the way it presents the personnel?
Say, Craig, what is it with you and him?
Oh, I don't know. It's sort of, chemical. Just one of those things.
Yes, so it's now going to be Collins and Straker on the Rescue Fix Sid mission.
Look in Collins' clearance tests.
And Gray's gone to check with Jackson.
He passed all the regulation tests perfectly.
All the regulation tests?
I love this.
Yeah?
Are there any others?
It's like we're visiting Dr. Jackson's Chamber of Horrors.
What?
I've been pursuing a line of research. Nothing official. Just an idea of my own.
Ah, yes, this is how Dr. Frankenstein got started. But no, Jackson has built an empty cupboard with some blinking lights.
I call this an isolator.
What does it do?
Well, have a guess.
It cuts you off from all outside influences. Sound, heat, light, microwaves, even cosmic rays.
Brilliant lighting on Jackson
I
here.
wanted to study the effect on the brain of a total absence of stimuli.
You could just show them an episode of Friends.
One of the things I do is record the brain's electrical patterns both inside and outside this cabinet.
Yes, Jackson has taken to putting people in this cabinet. This is an unofficial experiment. He's told no one about this. And I have to assume it's just one of many interesting side experiments that the good doctor has on the go. He's got an agreement with Straker. Straker doesn't ask questions. It's just, let Jackson do his job and he can have his side projects.
Isolator, that's the button inside. Now, I'm going to show you Collins.
Yes, Jackson has also been recording his colleagues' brainwaves.
Outside the isolator, that's Collins inside.
And inside, he's absolutely brain dead.
What's your conclusion?
It's too early to have one. I've got...
He's absolutely flatlined, and Jackson's like, well, I don't know, it could mean anything. I'm not supposed to have built this machine in the first place.
Anyone else about this?
There's nothing to tell.
There's nothing weird.
It's a purely An official experiment.
When do you expect your computer analysis?
It's not as creepy as some of the other experiments I've got on the go.
If I'm not at home, I'll be at Colin's apartment.
Oh, where's that? Yeah, it's so strange Jackson has found that Collins is brain dead. He's not reported it. He's somehow let him go back on duty and he's only just now discovering this. What is going on with everybody this week? Oh, it's brilliant. I love it. The more this goes on, the more screwed up it gets, and I just love it.
Master, please enter. I'm afraid I can't spare you much time. Ed and I are flying off to the Cape in an hour.
Yes, we're now at Collins's apartment, and it looks very nice. I suspect this may be a reuse of the set, an apartment set from the Psycho Bombs.
The one you crashed in?
Really?
Are you sure the map reference you gave us was the right one?
Yeah, I was pretty groggy at the time. Could have been 1 mile, 2 miles either way.
Yes, they don't find his spaceship. They don't find the UFO.
What happened?
No, mind is, very much of a blank still.
But Collins doesn't seem to care. And Darren Nesbitt is the guy playing Collins. A very interesting performer, very charismatic, very unique performance style that doesn't work for some people.
Now, what's that supposed to mean?
But I've always really enjoyed it.
Ah, Virginia.
I've also heard him say that he feels certain supermarionation characters were modelled on him. I'm sure I've heard him say either Alan Tracy or Joe 90 he feels were modelled on him.
What are you talking about?
Particularly in his role in The Prisoner. He's a blonde number 2 with glasses. He looks a lot like Joe there.
He put you in a cabinet.
Yes? What about it?
When you were
I remember I'm having flashbacks to the cabinet. The things I saw in there, you can't know. I also have to... How did Jackson get him out of the cabinet if he was brain dead while he's in there? Did he just collapse?
Nothing. A body without a will.
Now, look here, I know that you have never liked me.
I think it helps that, Collins... Darren Nesbitt is a fairly charismatic actor, and I think that really helps sell this character. The idea that he's, not only Straker's friend, but he can be a womanizer, and he can also be a professional who rubs up other professionals the wrong way. But there it is.
Now, if that is really the case...
Gray has accused Collins of being reprogrammed and sent back to kill Straker.
Reason with a robot.
And, we'll go back to something I mentioned earlier. This is basically confirming, yes, Collins has been sent back to Earth specifically to kill Straker. This whole plan is to do with killing Straker. Fine. It's a bit of a retread of the episode Kill Straker, but, why wouldn't the aliens try the same thing again? But the fact that we had that scene earlier where Collins is alone in Straker's office with Straker, why didn't he just take out a gun and finish him off right there? Again, well, if he did that, we wouldn't have much of a story. Anyway, Collins won that fight. Gray is down on the floor and bleeding. And who's this on the phone?
Colonel Gray?
Speaking.
The computer confirms.
Oh, dear.
Collins has had surgery.
I'll be right over.
Yes, Collins somehow does a good enough impression of Gray to fool Jackson. I don't know how Jackson would have missed the fact that Collins had surgery. Did Jackson just not bother doing any sort of, post-crash, pre-going back on duty medical check? I guess not. He's probably got his, his Frankenstein's monster in the basement that he was busy with. And here's another odd moment. Jackson becomes aware that there's someone else in the room with him. He turns and there's Collins. And that's it. Next scene. Collins is on the plane with Straker heading off to, is it Cape Kennedy? So we don't know in this story what happened to Jackson. In the script, he is given a serum to help him forget recent events. I don't know what you'd call that. But it's so... either way, whether you include that scene or not, it's just so, I'm going to let you live because you are a main character. If you wanted to put this episode at the end of the run, you could say Collins killed Jackson, but nobody wants Jackson dead. And here we have some old footage from Doppelganger. Quite a lot of model and live action footage coming up here, including a shot of the launch control building. There's Jeremy Wilkin at his desk again.
Well, I hope I can still drive one of these things.
Yes, so do I.
We have retract on 1 and 2. Will you confirm your link is correct?
I was just thinking there, why don't Shadow use their own space equipment? But it has been established in Close-Up, Shadow don't have facilities for a major rocket launch. They just have the sort of lunar module carriers, which I suppose you could jettison a lunar module once you reached Earth orbit, but
all internal systems at -50.
I'm not a space person. But who's this?
But always he leaves me.
Colin's housekeeper is about to discover John Gray's body.
You know, it's the first place burglars look.
But he likes the place left clean and tidy.
And do you know who that is? Some of you probably will. I will tell you, it's a far more interesting fact than your fact that Wanda Ventham is Benedict Cumberbatch's mother. That is Nancy Nevinson, who was the voice of Twizzle. That doppelganger launch still looks gorgeous, even in 4x3. Oh, it's lovely stuff. Yeah, that was her only other Anderson contribution after Twizzle. She gets these couple of very quick scenes, only a few lines, and there she is gone. So that's from 1957, back in... what are we here? 1970, 71?
How about you, Clint?
Thank you, Houston. This is SID 2 reporting. All systems go.
I wonder if anyone at Cape Kennedy wondered why they were sending a famous film producer into space. More reused footage here. The ambulance from Question of Priorities is being used to carry Gray to hospital. And we're about to launch the recovery ship. This is the SID 2 recovery ship, which, again, I really don't like the look of this thing. I'm not sure if it's the design or if it's just the way it's filmed. It's very bright, this shot of this spaceship, but it's also very triangular. I don't like it.
Ah, there she is. There's old Sid.
Wait, Sid's a woman? Okay.
Right on the old button.
Yeah, okay. Well, Sid is female. You heard it here first. I do like the shot of poor old Sid, just askew in Earth orbit. And it is a clever plan on the part of the aliens that Sid, who essentially is just there to say, oh, look, UFO's over there. If you knock Sid out,
All right.
maybe Shadow won't be so able to deal with them in the future. Meanwhile, Gray is struggling in hospital.
Well, time to go for our walkies, old man.
And I like that it's only now that they've made it into Earth orbit and Straker is just now starting to think, actually, maybe Gray was onto something. Maybe Collins is compromised. And for all the flaws that I've pointed out with this one, and I do believe that the character stuff does work against this episode, I have the perfect solution for all of those problems. Keep the story as is. Drop, unfortunately, Darren Nesbitt and Gary Raymond, and replace Colonel Gray with Colonel Foster, replace Colonel Collins with Colonel Freeman. And suddenly, everything makes sense. Straker says Collins is an old friend. Well, Freeman is his oldest and closest friend. That's been established. You want to get Freeman off the series, according to ITC America. If you were going to write him off the series, this episode just seems tailor-made to do it.
You had a nasty concussion. If you didn't have a concrete skull, you wouldn't be with us now.
And having Foster in the Grey role of, he's saying,
"Get me a bloody telephone!"
Oh, apologies for the bad language there. It won't happen again. Foster saying, hang on, Freeman's not all there. It would make so much more sense that Straker would then be saying, no, hang on, this is Alec Freeman. He's my best friend. Again, previously established sexual chemistry with Colonel Lake. It's all there. You could do it. But I doubt this episode was written with Freeman in mind. This is odd. Yes, Gray has told the Doctor to call Shadow to report the fact that Collins is going to kill Straker. And who answers the phone? Foster. Foster, who was established in about 10 minutes ago that he was going to be strapped down in bed for about 3 weeks. He's up and fine. But yeah.
Commander, Collins. Collins is going to kill you.
Well, no, Paul, I don't think... It's only at the very last minute Straker actually bothers to listen to anybody.
So Gray was right.
And I thought he was wrong. Yeah, but again, just imagine this scene, imagine this story.
Listen, Craig, you can beat this thing.
The way I imagine it. Just with it being Freeman, not Collins, this would be so much more tragic, it would be so much more believable.
Listen to me.
It would also help having Foster in the Grey role, having previously been put in this situation himself of being brainwashed to kill Straker.
Your waves.
They may have your mind, Craig, but they can never get your soul.
Yes.
Craig, listen to me. Craig!
But no, he's not there. Again, why didn't he just do this in Straker's office? I don't know. Maybe I'm being very unfair to this episode. I do apologise if this is a favourite of anybody's. As I said, it is...
Come in, Commander Straker, are you...
It is one I do like, but it's generally in spite of its flaws. Because I like Darren Nesbitt, and to be honest, I find it fairly enjoyable how completely out of character everybody is with this. But I think what we have here is a good but flawed episode that could have been great if they had done what we know ITC in America wanted to do: get rid of Freeman, bring George Sewell back for one story,
and nothing,
and kill him.
A body without a will.
And for the record, I wouldn't want Colonel Freeman dead, but this would seem to be an ideal way to get him off the series if you had to do it. But Ed has...
Are you receiving me?
Well, he's removed Collins' air supply.
Are you all right?
Yes.
Thank God. What about Collins?
He's out of it.
And Ed Bishop, who hasn't had much to do this episode...
He could have killed me.
Does get some nice acting at the end here. And I also love, I think I've mentioned before, anytime you see a lone spacesuited figure spinning off into space, never to be recovered, it is quite a haunting image, even though in this case it's clearly a model. We just hold on it for a very long time, and that's it. That's Collins gone. That's the man who came back, has gone again. And so is our time with this episode. And that was, as I've said... I really struggle to decide on my feelings for this one. I think, on the whole, I generally say I do like it because it's got that Pinewood era feel of very confident, slick direction. The pace is much faster, but the character stuff, again, I put it down to unfamiliarity with the series on the part of Terence Feely. The characters just do not gel in the way that they normally do. It is like a parallel universe version of the show. Darren Nesbitt and Gary Raymond, both strong performances. I just wish if I could rewrite this show my way, we might have had a slightly better episode. Never mind.
UFO.
Nice.
Whenever I say UFO, I always think of Barry Gray singing his little theme sung one. You remember UFO, yes. Jerry's first live action show.
That's right.
Went drinking with Commander Ed Bishop. It turned out to be a
what a shame we didn't have that at the Standby for Action concert in Birmingham.
I mentioned it to
lyrics.
the producers before. Yeah. She said, "Well, we could do that, you know." No, actually, I quite like Barry's lyrics to Joe 90, which were quite sweet.
Oh yeah,
do you remember those?
No. Do you?
Vaguely. Joe 90. What a boy, there was no one could be cuter. An electronic king who could do anything with the brain that could rival a computer.
Oh,
that was something like that. It's quite sweet.
That's nice, yeah.
But obviously sounds better in Barry's kind of northern tones.
Lilting tones, yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Oh, well.
Anyway, that was UFO, and I just randomly sung in inverted commas from Joe 90, so I feel like we've slipped into a parallel universe.
Yeah, talking of which, over on our YouTube channel, people have been commenting on the last couple of pods and Fab Facts videos. And,
is that a parallel universe?
It is, yeah. It is sometimes on YouTube, yeah. Trevor Random says, I reckon a live-action version of Joe 90 would be great. And a cartoon version of Space Precinct. Yeah, I can see
Space
that.
Precinct.
I can see an animated series, rather like the sort of, the animated Star Treks and Lower Decks and so on.
Yeah, I can see that.
That could work. Emma Seymour says, I'd love to see a live-action Stingray. Wow.
Well, of course. Wouldn't that be fun?
Darth DMC says if Disney got their hands on anything, they would wokeify it. And woke is written in big capital letters.
Oh.
Okay. 88 GTI says, I'd love to see a live-action movie of Joe 90. I wouldn't even mind a live-action version of The Secret Service. I'm sure Gabriel's up for it. I mean, it sort of was a live-action version, wasn't it? That's the thing. It's,
sort of semi-live action, yeah.
Andrew Parkin says, live-action Joe 90 needs to be as dark as the original show. Likewise, a live-action Captain Scarlet would do well if written in the right way. I would love to see a film version of Space Precinct too. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You should make that happen.
Again. Yeah, I shall click my fingers and all these things will be done.
Exactly.
By
here's a couple more. Michael Sharp says, actually, a Joe 90 TV movie was made. It was called Dollhouse and was on Fox in 2009. Now, I saw a little bit of chatter about these various things a few years ago that were similar in tone.
Series.
Yeah,
which wasn't a
direct.
It wasn't a direct rip-off, allegedly.
Sure.
But, had some similarities, yeah.
Yeah. And finally, we were talking about acronyms, weren't we, a couple of weeks ago, and we settled upon SPA.
Settled.
Meaning... Well, yeah.
Tolerated.
Okay. Well, Shamanic Knight has a great one. FAB, fans answer back.
Oh,
Why
nice.
didn't we think of that?
We should have thought of that.
We should have thought of that. But Shamanic Knight got there before us.
Nice work.
There we are.
Although that does provide us with some confusion because FAB is already a bit contentious as it is. So do we really need another one?
Okay, all right. Well, it's a nice idea, though, isn't it? Fans
it is a
answer
nice
back.
idea.
Yeah. There we are. You can comment on our YouTube videos that go up. Every couple of days there's something new. Something great to watch any day of the week, from old episodes to Chris Dale's amazing primers to Beyond Anderson to Fab Facts and our podcasts. And is that a barking dog?
All of those things.
Yeah,
the dog's barking, but we'll just let them carry on.
Yeah. There we are.
Sorry.
All on the YouTube channel. Yeah, fine.
There are lots more stuff coming, more free episodes on the way, and all sorts of goodies.
Ooh.
So keep an eye at youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV.
Great. Nice.
Good. Right, I feel like we've sort of come to a natural conclusion now the dogs are barking. That means I've got to go and attend to that.
Yes, and I've read everything I had written down, so I've got nothing else to say.
Right, well, since we've run out of things to say, that's the end of Pod 206. We'll be back with 207 and 208 in the next couple of weeks. How's that? Is that okay?
I've run out of things to say.
Good, okay. Richard's run out of things to say. Well, thanks for listening, Podsteron. Sorry Richard's given up talking. I bid you a farewell and a jolly week, and we'll be in your clammy ears next week. Goodbye.
Oh, hang on. I found something to say. Bye.
Go on. Yeah, I knew it. Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Even the dogs were unimpressed with your gag.
Well, it takes a lot to impress your dogs, I know that. How many have you got?
Absolutely.
9, 10,
Comedy
something like that?
connoisseurs, 8.
8 dogs!
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Crazy.
Yeah, and I think we've got 2 new pygmy goats on the way in the next few weeks as well.
Wow. Okay, where are you going to put them all? You've got a minimiser?
Well, the field.
Oh, I see.
You don't need a minimiser with pygmy goats, do you?
I suppose not. They've already been minimised. But they're not pygmy goats forever, are they? They do grow up into proper goats.
No, they're pygmy. They're not. It's not like the micro pigs that grow up to be pigs. They are just pygmy goats because they're a miniature breed.
Weird, wasn't it? People started calling piglets micro pigs. They're piglets, and they grow into big pigs.
Yeah.
Very odd.
Anyway, there you go. Well, now we put the world to rights about the size of animals.
Yes.
I'm going to go and deal with my dogs and tell them to stop barking.
All right.
You can go and feed your cats or whatever you need to do.
Oh, yes. It's about that time of day, isn't it? Fair enough.
Yeah. And I'll see you in 207.
Yeah, see you then. Bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.